from Tennessee. That's how you say it. You don't say Tennessee. Tennessee. And they've come a long way, and so we're just glad to include us in their visitation. So I'll shut up and turn it over to them.
Okay.
Lord bless.
Well, good afternoon, folks. We are Don and Donna, and we are just very happy to be here. Thank you so much for letting us come and worship with you. For the next, I'd say maybe 55 to 60 minutes, we'll be hammering on some strings, we'll sing you some songs, and we'll be telling you some stories in between. And we're going to start it out with a song that has been around for a long, long time. It's called Unclouded Day.
Tell me of a home where no storm clouds rise. Oh, they tell me of an unclouded day. Oh, the land of cloudless day. Oh, the land of an unclouded sky. Oh, they tell me of a home where no storm clouds rise. Oh, they tell me of an unclouded day. Oh, they tell me of an unclouded day. Oh, the land of cloudless day. Oh, the land of an unclouded sky.
Oh, they tell me of a home where no storm clouds rise.
Oh, they tell me of an unclouded day. Oh, they tell me of an unclouded day. Well, it is so good to be here in beautiful, sunny Arizona. We love to come out here this time of year. My folks used to live up at Black Canyon City, so we come out at least every couple of years to visit. And then we came to Oracle, and we love it over here in this part of the state. It's country, but it's not too far from where the cities are. So we love it. And Jim was telling us that this is one of the dark places where you can really see the stars. So we may have to stay long enough tonight to see that. Well, as we travel like this each weekend, a lot of times folks like to know what we do for a living. We normally just do this on the weekends, about 48 or 49 weekends out of the year. We pack everything up on Thursday or Friday and then head to different parts of the country. Last weekend, I think it was Missouri. And next weekend, we'll be here in Arizona one more weekend. Well, Don works with wood. He builds cabinets and furniture and things like that. And for about 18 or 19 years, he's been building these musical instruments full time. Folks were often asking where they could get these old-fashioned Bible instruments. So he started out building a psaltery. You know how the Bible talks about the psaltery and the harp? Well, that triangle-shaped one that I played with a bow is a psaltery. And he built 2 of them. And the very next weekend, the Lord blessed, and he sold them both. So he kept building more. I think he's working on number 426 right now. Right? Each one has a little different tone because of the type of wood and the sound hole design. He also builds these hammer dulcimers and mountain dulcimers, and he started building zithers a while back too. After a while, we'll hold them up so you can get a better look at them. My part is to help put the strings on. And I'm a nurse. I recently, about a year ago, retired from being a nurse practitioner, so now I get to be the lucky one. Don keeps building instruments, and I get to be retired. Of course, I help put on the strings. I guess I do my part. Well, a while back, we were coming out here to Arizona, and we were driving along I-40, somewhere between Grants and Gallup, New Mexico, and I looked up in the sky, and there was a sundog. Have you ever seen that? A little rainbow by the sun? And it reminded me when I was growing up as a child on the farm, I used to ask my dad about things like that because he knows a lot about nature. So I said, "What does that mean, Dad, when there's that little rainbow by the sun?" And he said, "Well, if the sundog is on the north, it's going to get colder. And if the sundog is on the south, it's going to get warmer." Well, one day I saw a double sundog. So I said, "Well, Dad, what does that mean?" And he said, "Well, that means it's either going to get warmer or it's going to get colder." Well, what does it take to make a rainbow? Two things: sunlight and moisture. And the way that the light goes through the little droplets of moisture, it spreads out the spectrum of light, and we see the beautiful colors. And that reminds me of a scripture. In Psalm 85:10, it says, "Mercy and truth are met together. Righteousness and peace have kissed each other." It takes both, doesn't it? Mercy and truth, righteousness and peace, law and grace, like two sides of the same coin. And they all come together at the cross, where Jesus willingly laid down his life for our sins because he loves us so much. Years I spent in vanity and pride, caring not my Lord was crucified, knowing not it was for me he died on Calvary. Mercy there was great and grace free, pardon there was multiplied to me. There my burdens all found liberty at Calvary. By God's word at last my sin I learned. Then I trembled at the law I'd spurned, till my guilty soul imploring turned to Calvary. Mercy there was great and grace was free, pardon there was multiplied to me. There my burdens all found liberty at Calvary. Mercy there was great and grace was free, pardon there was multiplied to me. There my burdens all found liberty at Calvary, at Calvary, at Calvary.
Donna and I live in West Tennessee, but before that, we lived outside of a little town called Fair Grove. And Fair Grove was about 15 miles north of Springfield, Missouri. And at that time, the Lord had blessed us with about 6 acres of land. And I would say probably 90% of the land was trees, so we had a lot of wildlife there. We had the turkey, the deer, the rabbits, the squirrels. Sometimes a fox would come by. I think he was looking for the rabbit, but I'm not sure. But we'd have a lot of animals, and we had a lot of birds. And we moved there. Donna said, "I'd like to have a bird feeder right outside of our living room window." So we went out shopping for a bird feeder. Now we got one of those squirrel-proof bird feeders. Don't you believe it? Those squirrels can get in just about anything they want to. But that's not the story. We got one of those feeders. We hung it outside, filled it up full of bird seed, and sure enough, the birds started flying in. We got the cardinals, the finches, the red woodpeckers would come in, the little chickadees will fly in there. Then the doves will come in and pick up the seeds that fall on the ground. So we had a good variety of birds that would come in. And they'd come flying in about 7:30 in the morning to get their breakfast. They'd fly in there, grab their food, and fly off. And one morning I was sitting there watching them, and they were flying in and flying out, and this little chickadee flew in there, landed, but it didn't fly away. And I would watch it, and every once in a while it'd flap its wings, but it still wouldn't fly. So I went right up to the window. Now the bird feeder is about 4 feet from the window. I went up to that window. I watched that bird for a while. He'd flap its wings. He'd jump a little bit, but he still wouldn't fly away. So I got my shoes on, and I walked out on the deck, went right up to that bird feeder, and here that little chickadee has got his head stuck right between the two bars where the seeds come out. Folks, he could have flapped his wings all day. He wasn't going anywhere. So I grabbed a hold of him with my right hand, and with my left hand, I opened up the back of that bird feeder, and I wiggled his little head out between those two bars, made sure he was okay, and when I opened up my hand, he flew and landed about 3 feet from me on our railing, and he turned around and looked at me. No, he didn't talk to me. But if he could have, he probably would have said, thank you. Thank you for getting me out of the situation I got myself into. You know, kindness works on everything. Everybody needs to try a little kindness. With a heavy load from the seeds he sowed. If you see your sister falling by the way, just stop and say, you're going the wrong way. You got to try a little kindness, show a little kindness, shine your light for everyone to see. And if you try a little kindness, then you overlook the blindness of the narrow-minded people on their narrow-minded street. Don't walk around the down and out. Lend a helping hand instead of a doubt. And the kindness that you show every day will help someone along life's way. You got to try a little kindness, show a little kindness. Shine your light for everyone to see. And if you try a little kindness, then you will find life of everybody.
It's really hard these days to find peace, isn't it? There's not much peace on earth. But Jesus said, my peace I give to you, not like the world gives. Let not your heart be troubled. An artist was asked one time to paint a picture of perfect peace. What would you paint if you could paint? Maybe a beautiful Arizona sunset or a mountain scene? Well, this artist painted a picture of a raging thunderstorm. And in the midst of the storm, on a little twig, was a bird singing her heart out for joy in the midst of the storm. That's the kind of peace the Lord promises us. Well, I'm tired and so weary, but I must go along till the Lord comes and calls me away. Oh yes, and the morning so bright, and the Lamb is the light, and the night is as dark as the sea. Oh yes, there will be peace in the valley for me someday. There will be peace in the valley for me, dear Lord, I pray. There'll be no sadness, no sorrow, no trouble I see. There will be peace in the valley for me. Well, the wolf will be gentle, and the bear will be tame, and the lion shall lay down with the lamb, oh yes, and the beast from the wild will be led by a child, and I'll be changed from this creature that I am. Oh yes, there will be peace in the valley for me someday. There will be peace in the valley for me, dear Lord, I pray. There'll be no sadness, no sorrow, no trouble I see. There will be peace in the valley for me. Sing along if you'd like to. There will be peace in the valley for me someday. There will be peace in the valley for me, dear Lord, I pray. There'll be no sadness, no sorrow, no trouble I see. There will be peace in the valley for me. There will be peace in the valley for me.
So how many of you heard the style of music called bluegrass? Okay, how many of you like the style of bluegrass? Well, a few of you, very good. Well, don't get excited because we don't know how to play it. I wish we did, but we don't know how, you know. But hey, we were in Missouri here a while back, and we was playing for a little church, and we just got started, and a mother and a daughter came in through the door, and they sat down about midway of the church, and the mother was probably, I would say, 90, maybe 95 years old, and they sat down, and we just got started, and when the mother was talking, she thought she was whispering, but everybody could hear her. And so she leaned over to her daughter. We just got started. She leaned over to her daughter, and she says, "That sounds like green grass." So that's what we do. We do green grass. Well, we're going to do a song for you here called Little Mountain Church House. I don't know how it's going to go, so just smile, okay? Here we go. Let's see how it works. There's a little mountain church in my thoughts of yesterday, where friends and family gathered for the Lord. There an old-fashioned preacher taught a straight and narrow way for what few coins the congregation could afford.
dressed in all our very best, sat on pews of solid oak. I remember how our voices filled the air. Mama sounded like an angel on those high soprano notes. When the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there, looking back on that little mountain church house has become my life's cornerstone. It was there in that little mountain church house I first heard the word I based my life upon. Looking back on that little mountain church house has become my life's cornerstone. It was there in that little mountain church house I first heard the word I based my life upon. At the all-day Sunday singing and dinner on the grounds, many were the souls that were revived, while my brothers and my sisters who have gone on before slept in peace in that maple grove nearby. Looking back on that little mountain church house has become my life's cornerstone. It was there in that little mountain church house I first heard the word I based my life upon. I first heard the word I based my life upon.
Now you know what green grass sounds like.
When we got here and got everything all set up, I took a little walk around outside to take pictures of your beautiful church. Jim told us this is the oldest Protestant church in Arizona. And I got some beautiful pictures, and I noticed something. Out this way, there's some sidewalks, and there are paved stone pavers out there. And that is really interesting to me because I think that my dad either made them or was supervising the crew that made them. He worked in Phoenix at the paved stone factory when they set it up, and he was the supervisor there. My mom and dad lived up most of their lives in Iowa, but my dad loved to pan for gold. And he would spend every single vacation out here in the Black Canyon City area out there panning for gold. And he would get gold, sometimes an ounce a year. And he loved it so much, after his vacation time was over, he'd take buckets of that black dirt back home and pan it in the garage. Seriously. Well, I grew up on a farm, an Iowa farm, and I remember farming back then was a lot like it is now. It's hard to make a living as a farmer. I don't know if Dad thought he'd make a living panning for gold in Arizona, but he told us one time he took us up to Big Bug, I think, off that area, and he said, "We might get enough to pay for the gas today." So it wasn't long when he had to have a job to be able to be out here. So he worked at the paved stone factory. But back when we were kids, he worked at a cement block factory in Waterloo, about 35 miles from where we lived in Little Winthrop, Iowa. And when he got home from work at night, the farm chores still had to be done. And he'd spend lots of nights on that old Oliver 1850 all night long, planting and cultivating and harvesting because he had to go to work the next day. My dad's hands were never clean and smooth. They were always cut and scarred with ground-in grease. But when I put my little hand in that big, strong hand, I felt really safe. And I remember thinking, if God is like my dad, then I know he's someone I can trust. That's the way the Lord designed it, isn't it? To give us an earthly father, to show us the love of our heavenly Father, that we would come to trust him. I know not every child has that blessing, but even in cases of abuse and neglect, there's a special Bible promise. In the Psalms it says, "When my father and my mother forsake me, the Lord will take me up." He's our perfect Father, isn't he? The perfect example of absolute unselfish love. Well, someone wrote a song about her dad, and when I heard it, I thought, She must have known my dad. I know some of you have heard this song. If you'd like to sing along, please feel free to do that. And think of the love in our Heavenly Father's hands. I remember Daddy's hands folded silently in prayer, and reaching out to hold me when I had a nightmare. You could read quite a story in the calluses and lines. Years of work and worry had left their mark behind. I remember Daddy's hands, how they held my mama tight and patted my back for something done right. There are things that I've forgotten that I love about the man, but I'll always remember the love in Daddy's hands. Daddy's hands were soft and kind when I was crying. Daddy's hands were hard as steel when I'd done wrong. Daddy's hands weren't always gentle, but I've come to understand there was always love in Daddy's hands. I remember Daddy's hands working till they bled, sacrificed unselfishly just to keep us all fed. If I could do things over, I'd live my life again and never take for granted the love in Daddy's hands. Daddy's hands were soft and kind when I was crying. Daddy's hands were hard as steel when I'd done wrong. Daddy's hands weren't always gentle, but I've come to understand there was always love in Daddy's hands. Daddy's hands were soft and kind when I was crying. Daddy's hands were hard as steel when I'd done wrong. Daddy's hands weren't always gentle, but I've come to understand there was always love in Daddy's hands. There was always love in Daddy's hands. Well, do you remember some of the advice that your dads and moms gave you through the years? I mostly remember things that Mom would say because Dad wasn't home that often. She would say things like this: if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, right? You had moms like me. I do remember one thing Dad would say. If we'd be out in the yard playing and we'd fall and skin our knee, he would say, well, just be glad it's not your pants. Your skin will heal. Well, this young man wrote a song about the advice his dad gave him through the years. And it's very practical advice. I'm guessing you probably heard some of the same advice growing up. Some of it is kind of comical. Some of it comes directly from the Bible, but it's definitely practical. It's called Don't Ever Sell Your Saddle. Daddy should have been a preacher man, 'cause everybody loved to hear him speak. He didn't always follow his own advice, but we got a sermon every week. He'd say trouble always starts as fun, broken hearts will always mend. Tough times don't last, tough people do. Nothing breaks if it can bend. Don't ever sell your saddle, never owe another man. Watch where you spit on a windy day. Don't use words you don't understand. Find the Lord before you need Him, and never lose your stride. Don't ever sell your saddle, 'cause life's a long, long ride. Daddy never ran from anything, always took his share of the blame. Had a heart big enough to fill a valley up, but hard enough to stop a train. He'd say only fight when you have to, 'cause there's always a faster gun. You'll know a hero from a coward when you see which way they run. Don't ever sell your saddle, never owe another man. Watch where you spit on a windy day. Don't use words you don't understand. Find the Lord before you need Him, and never lose your stride. Don't ever sell your saddle, 'cause life's a long, long ride. Don't ever sell your saddle, 'cause life's a long, long ride.
Hey, before we go on to the next song, how many of you would like to know what the instruments are? Very good, thank you. I wouldn't know what to say if you said no, so I'm glad you do. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to raise up the ones we can, because we know that you know what some of these are. And when we raise them up, you tell us what they are, okay? How about this one right here? Anybody know what it is?
Well, I do, because you told me.
Okay, well, go ahead, Jim. Tell us what it is. A mountain dulcimer, very good. It's also called the lap dulcimer because you play it on your lap. And the difference between the mountain dulcimer and the lap dulcimer is when you're in the mountains, it's a mountain dulcimer, very good. When you're on the flatlands, it's a lap dulcimer. That's the only difference. How about this one? A mandolin. That is a custom-made mandolin. Donna's brother is building mandolins, and he built that one for us, and we're glad he did because we really enjoy playing it. How about this one? Anybody know what this one might be? It's in the Bible, and it starts with a P. Psaltery.
Yeah.
It's called a psaltery. Just like they talk about it in the book of Psalms. They talk about a psaltery and a harp and some of the other instruments that King David played. Well, that is a psaltery. Everywhere we go, we always tell everybody that's the psaltery that David played. And we're talking about our son David is who we're talking about. How about this one right here? Starts with a Z. A zither, very good. That's called a zither. They started making the zithers back in the late 1800s, and all you do on a zither is you pluck the notes. Early 1900s, they came up with an auto harp, and some of you know what an auto harp is, and actually the auto harp took the place of the zither because they made it easier for folks to play. On the auto harp, you push the notes down, then you strum the strings. On the zither, you have to pluck each note out. How about the one right up here in front that Donna was playing? It's another dulcimer, and she was doing what on it? Hammer.
Dulcimer.
It's called a hammer dulcimer. Well, we're going to go ahead and do a song called Lily of the Valley. Donna's going to start it with a zither, go into the psaltery, and then into the hammer dulcimer. Now, folks, if she gets a little excited, one comes flying your way, you catch it, all right? Because we don't want it to fall and break on the floor. Now, nothing's been flying. Donna's been pretty good. This is Lily of the Valley. Which instrument did you like the best?
Hammer.
Hammer, very good.
Former drummer learned to play one of those?
Yes, drummers are the best hammer
They
dulcimer
tell us the
players.
drummers are the best hammer dulcimer players. I guess because they got that
Yeah.
going on, you know. Well, we're going to do another song for you and another instrumental song. And this is one of our favorite songs to do. And Donna will start it with the zither, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. Okay, we want you to sing with us, okay? You're going to have to look more excited than that. Come on. Get your hymnals there, the red one, and turn to page 466. And when you have that open, tell us what the title of the song is. We forgot. Everybody have it? What's it called? What a friend we have in Jesus. How many of you heard this song? All right, very good. So that means you ought to sing it loud. We're going to do this a little bit differently. Donna will play all four of these instruments up here, so we're going to have to give her a little time in between the verses to grab a different instrument. So here's how we're going to do it. The first two verses we're going to sing in the key of C. Then we're going to switch to the key of G and sing the second or third verse. Then we're going to switch to the key of D and sing the first verse over again. Come on, we can do this, right? One of those keys ought to fit your voice, right? Let's give it a try. Either C, G, or D, and sing it loud, okay? Here we go. What a friend we have in Jesus. Okay, the second verse. Wait, okay, all right, we ready? Okay, here we go. Okay, the key of G, here we go. Ready? sounded really great. I said, if we had a big enough vehicle, we'd take you all with us. Yeah, you guys sound really good. I got a question for you. How many of you like the key of C?
What is that?
Key is, what is that?
I'm a drummer, what do I know?
Nobody like the key of C? You do, okay. How about the key of G? Did anybody like that one?
G was low.
How about D? Did it? Sure, just sure. Oh, okay.
Anyone?
All right. Well, that's good. I was just curious how many like who was singing what, you know. So, anyway, we have 2 more songs to do for you folks. Thank you so much for letting us come and worship with you this afternoon. We do hope at least one of the songs so far has touched and blessed you in some way. We'd like to mention, if you like this type of music, we do have our CDs, our DVD, and our new product over there in the fellowship hall, I guess you'd call it. You're welcome to come over there and take a look at those. I'm going to briefly tell you just a little bit about them. We do have our new project that we have out is our new book. And if you like the stories you heard this afternoon right here, we have many more in that book. And behind the book, there's also a sample CD. So you get a sample CD and you get the book. So I think they call that a bargain, don't they? Is that what they call it? Anyway, you get that. And also our newest CD that we have out is called Down Home Gospel Volume 2. It has 16 songs that we enjoy singing and playing. We also have a Down Home Gospel Volume 1. We have a children's CD. It comes with a coloring book so the kids can sit down and they can color and they can listen to the CD at the same time. We have a Heavenly Strings Ozark Mountain style, and that one is all instrumental. You can sing right along to it. And we have some other ones over there too you're welcome to take a look at. We also have a DVD, like I mentioned, and it's a 57-minute running time, and it shows us playing our instruments on some of the songs and have some beautiful pictures and videos that we've taken throughout the years. What else we got? Instruments, yeah, we have some of those if you're interested in getting an early Christmas present, or a late one, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, we have some, I think we have 4 bowed psalteries left. We have 1 hammer dulcimer, 2 mountain dulcimers, and 2 zithers. And you're welcome to come up here and take a look at these if you would like. Sit down and play them if you want to. And just talk to either one of us and we can help you out if you're interested. 2 more songs to do for you.
A few years ago, our older son Daniel was recommitting his heart to the Lord. He had walked away from Jesus in his teenage years and lived kind of a rough life. And he finally came to himself. And he was reading Fox's Book of Martyrs. Not necessarily an easy thing to read. And another book called The Great Controversy that tells the beautiful story of the great men and women of God who gave testimony to their faith, even at the risk of their own lives, and stood firm for Jesus. And he was reading those things and something was puzzling him. How did those great men and women of God know the words to say when they stood before these kings and queens, the words that would ring through the centuries? How did Martin Luther know to say as he stood before the Diet, "It is unsafe for a man to speak against his conscience. Here I stand. I can do no other." Well, Daniel pondered that for a while, and then he found the verse in Matthew that says, don't plan ahead of time what you're going to say when you're called to give testimony to your faith. The Holy Spirit will give you the words at that time. And he wrote this song, and the message of this song touched our hearts. And we hope that it'll touch your hearts too. Teach me, Lord, today. Tell me what to say when I'm in front of kings and queens. Guide me, Lord, I pray. I will be a light, shining in the night. Though the world takes me to flames, I will keep the fight. I have heard the stories told about the faithful men of old. They were faithful to the fire. To be like them is my desire. Help me stand for you, I pray. Help me witness, come what may. time when our light must shine. Men will hate us for our ways. That is why we must today learn to keep the faith.
Learn to keep the faith.
All the things we say, all the things we do and think, that way we can stand without a blame. I have heard the stories told about the faithful men of old. They were faithful to the fire. To be like them is my desire. Help me stand for you, I pray. Help me witness, come what may. Though they take me to the stake, peace is mine for Jesus' sake. It's all worth it just to call him friend over again. I have heard the stories told about the faithful men of old. They were faithful to the fire. To be like them is my desire. Help me stand for you, I pray. Help me witness, come what may.
Come what may.
Help me stand,
Come what may.
stand for him. I mentioned that I am a retired nurse practitioner. I guess I did that for over 30 years. And I worked, well, first I worked as an RN in the hospital, intensive care units. I taught nursing for about 20 years. And then I became a nurse practitioner, and I enjoyed it very much until COVID hit, because then I had to do virtual visits. It's not the same. It was okay, but it wasn't the same. And we decided about 4 years ago that it was time to consider where we would end up when we retired. And we have a granddaughter in Nashville, Tennessee. So we began to look for land in Tennessee because we wanted to be close to Eva. And we found a place, and I was just going to commute from Missouri for the last 4 years. And it was a 6.5-hour commute. And that got old fast. So I looked around, and the little county where we live had a little hospital, Decatur County Medical Center. Had about 5 hospital beds and a little clinic attached to it. And they needed a nurse practitioner, so I applied and I was hired. And the clinic wasn't always very busy, and so I often would go and help over at the emergency department. When I was teaching nursing, I taught obstetrical and neonatal intensive care nursing. And so I would take students to the labor and delivery, and when the babies were really little, we'd take them over to the ICU. And one day we were there in the ER, and the ambulance call came in. This is a very rural county, and now that this hospital has shut its doors, there's no hospital for several counties around. Anyway, the call came in that they were bringing in a young girl, maybe 16, 17 years old. And she had just delivered her baby in the bathtub, and she was home alone. They didn't know how far along this baby was, but he was really having trouble, and it looked like he was very early. So we got things ready that we had as much as we could, and we called Jackson and said, please get the helicopter in the air. We got a little sick baby coming. And they arrived, and there was another nurse practitioner there, and so the mother went over where that nurse practitioner was helping her, and the baby came to me. And he was blue and limp, and he wasn't breathing. And so I did what you do and stimulated him and gave him oxygen and got him all warmed up. And all of a sudden, he got tight little muscle tone and got pink from head to toe and let out a big yell. And I knew he was going to be okay. He was about 28 weeks gestation. And things calmed down, and I was able to kind of relax a minute. And I looked over and I noticed his mama. And she looked so scared. And the nurse practitioner over there with her was screaming into her face, "You selfish thing, how could you do this? It's all about the baby. What drugs are you on? How could you be like this?" And my heart went out to her. And I thought, there, but for the grace of God, go I. How do I know that if my life had been like her life, that I could be there wondering if my baby was going to survive? No one there, even when the baby was being delivered in the bathtub. How much is one soul worth? The only way to estimate the worth of one's soul is to look at the price that Jesus was willing to pay for one. He would have left heaven and come to this dark little earth if only one of us would have needed his saving grace. He loves us that much. And when Jesus looks at us, he doesn't primarily see our sin. He sees what we can become by his grace if we'll just surrender our hearts to him. You can hear his voice of love. "My son, give me thine heart." How much is one soul worth? Well, someone wrote a poem about the worth of a soul, and this anonymous author compared it to an old violin that came up for auction. And to the people at the auction, it looked worthless, until the master violinist came forward and tuned up the strings and played a beautiful melody with the old instrument. And it made all the difference because of the touch of the master's hand. But we are from West Tennessee, and we don't have very many violins where we come from. But we do have a lot of fiddles. Problem is, the word fiddle doesn't fit. So we thought about it, and the word mandolin fits perfectly. So we're going to sing about the worth of a soul in the old mandolin. Well, it was battered and scarred, and the auctioneer felt it was hardly worth his while to waste much time on the old mandolin, but he held it up with a smile. "It sure ain't much, but it's all we got left. I guess we ought to sell it too. Now who's got a bid on this old mandolin? Just one more and we'll be through." And he cried, "One, give me $1, who'll make it two? Only $2, who'll make it three? $3 twice, well that's a good price, but who's got a bid for me? Raise up your hand and don't wait any longer, the auction's about to end. Who's got for just $1 more to bid on this old mandolin?" Well, the air was hot and the people stood around, and the sun was setting there. From the back of the crowd, a gray-haired man came forward, pulled up a chair. He wiped the dust from the old mandolin, and he tightened up the strings, and he played out a melody pure and sweet as the angels sing. And the music stopped, and the auctioneer, with a voice that was quiet and deep, he said, "What am I bid for this old mandolin?" He held it up for all to see, and he cried out, "One, give me 1,000, who'll make it two? Only 2,000, who'll make it three? 3,000 twice, well that's a good price, but who's got a bid for me?" The people cried out, "What made the change? We don't understand." And the auctioneer stopped and he said with a smile, "It was a touch of the master's hand." Now you know many a man with a life out of tune is battered and scarred with sin, and he's auctioned cheap to a thankless world, much like the old mandolin. And the master comes, and the foolish crowd, they never understand the worth of a soul and the change that's wrought by the touch of the master's hand. he cried out, "One, give me 1,000, who'll make it 2? Only 2,000, who'll make it 3? 3,000 twice, that's a good price, but who's got a bid for me?" The people cried out, "What made the change? We don't understand." And the auctioneer stopped and he said with a smile, "It was a touch of the master's hand. It was a touch of the master's hand."
We want to thank all of you for coming out this afternoon and listening to us. We really appreciate that. We want to say thank you to Jim for corresponding back and forth, and Pastor for answering our email. We really appreciate that very much.
And all
Thank
of those of
again.
you that helped us carry all this in.
Yeah, thank you very much. We got to carry it out too, by the way. Thanks.
By the way, everybody, I'll